In 1983, an Australian agronomist named Tony Renato was driving through southern Niger. It was one of the poorest countries on earth. The land was so barren, people said the Sahara Desert was swallowing it. And then, he got a flat tire. While he was changing it, he noticed something odd. The roadside was covered in these scrawny, stunted bushes. Nothing special, just weeds, you'd think. But Renato wasn't so sure. He got out and looked closer. Those weren't bushes. Those were trees. Big trees. Ancient trees, with trunks underground, trying to regrow. The trees hadn't disappeared. They were just waiting. That moment changed everything. Because what Renato stumbled onto that day would become the largest farmer-led reforestation project in Africa. 5 million hectares. 200 million trees. Without planting a single one. This is the story of the underground forest. To understand what Renato walked into, you need to understand Niger. It's in the Sahel region of West Africa, the belt of semi-arid land between the Sahara Desert and the savannas to the south. It gets maybe 300 to 600 millimeters of rain a year. It is regularly one of the hottest countries on the planet. But it wasn't always barren. Up until the 1960s, much of southern Niger was wooded savanna, scattered trees, grasses, farmland. Then a series of decisions and disasters turned it into a dust bowl. First, a government policy that actually encouraged clearing farmland of all trees. The thinking was that trees competed with crops for water and sunlight. So farmers cut them down. Millions of trees gone. Then came the droughts. The Great Sahel Drought of 1972 to 74 killed 100,000 people. It killed millions of cattle. It turned millions of people into refugees in their own country. The Sahara advanced by 5 kilometers a year. By the time Renato arrived in 1981, the experts had a clear verdict. Desertification in the Sahel was permanent. The land was gone. There was nothing to be done. The only problem with that verdict was that nobody asked the trees. Tony Renato arrived in Niger as a missionary agronomist. He was 24 years old, fresh out of university in Australia. He'd been sent to help farmers grow more food. It went badly. He tried everything. He set up tree nurseries, tens of thousands of seedlings. He watered them, protected them, planted them out. And they died. Every single one. The sun baked them dry. The wind buried them in sand. The goats ate whatever survived. For 2 years, he failed. And then he got a flat tire. It was 1983. He was driving through the Maradi region of southern Niger. He pulled over to change the tire, and he saw these bushes. Ugly, stunted things, about knee-high, growing along the roadside. He'd always assumed they were weeds. But this time he looked properly. He saw the base of one of those bushes was massive, as thick as his thigh. He dug around it. Under the surface, there was a full tree trunk. A trunk as big as his arm. Connected to a root system that went meters deep. What he was looking at was a tree that had been cut down, burned, or grazed to the ground, and was now resprouting from its original root system. The tree had been there the whole time. Underground. Waiting. It was an underground forest. Here's the technique, and it's almost absurdly simple. You walk through your field. You find the tree stumps. Each stump has multiple stems sprouting from it, sometimes 5, sometimes 20. You select the 3 to 5 strongest, straightest stems. You cut the rest. You prune the side branches. That's it. No nurseries. No watering. No planting. No fertilizer. The tree already has a mature root system that goes several meters into the ground. It already has access to water and nutrients that no seedling could reach. The stems grow 5 to 10 times faster than a planted seedling would. Within 2 to 3 years, those stems are full-sized trees. The star player in this story is a tree called Faidherbia albida. It's a nitrogen fixer, which means it pulls nitrogen out of the air and puts it into the soil, fertilizing the crops around it. But here's the clever part: Faidherbia albida loses its leaves during the wet season, when crops need sunlight. And it regrows its leaves during the dry season, when animals need fodder. It's like the tree evolved specifically to be a farmer's best friend. The biggest challenge wasn't technical. It was convincing farmers that letting trees grow on their land was a good idea. For decades, they'd been told the opposite. Trees were the enemy of farming. The government had paid them to cut trees down. Renato started with about 10 farmers. He showed them the technique. He paid them a small amount, essentially compensation for lost labor while they learned. The results were obvious within a year. The trees grew fast. The soil improved. The crops did better under the trees than in the open. And the word spread. There was no billboard campaign. No government program. No NGO with a multi-million-dollar budget. It was farmer to farmer. A neighbor showed a neighbor. A village elder told a visiting relative. Within 5 years, thousands of farmers had adopted the technique across the Maradi and Zinder regions. But there was a catch. The trees only survived if farmers owned them. In many parts of Niger, trees technically belonged to the state. If a farmer protected a tree, someone else could cut it down. So Renato and his team worked with local authorities to change the rules. They gave farmers legal ownership of the trees on their land. Once farmers owned the trees, everything changed. Trees became assets. They produced fodder, fruit, timber, medicine. They increased crop yields. They were worth more alive than dead. And the farmers stopped cutting them down. While Renato was working in Niger, a farmer in neighboring Burkina Faso was achieving something equally remarkable. His name was Yakuba Sawadogo. He never learned to read or write. But he knew the land. Sawadogo revived an ancient technique called zai, digging small planting pits, filling them with manure, and planting in them. The pits concentrate water and nutrients in one spot, giving seeds a chance to survive in the driest conditions. Year after year, Sawadogo dug his pits. He planted trees. His neighbors laughed at him. They called him crazy. Some burned his trees, 10 acres of them, in the night. He kept going. Over 40 years, he built a 40-hectare forest, a dense patch of green surrounded by a sea of brown. 60 different species of trees and shrubs. The water table rose by 5 meters. They measured it. Animals returned that hadn't been seen in decades. That patch of ground became known as the Forest of Wisdom. And it proved that even one person, with nothing but a digging stick and determination, could stop the desert. Yakuba Sawadogo died in 2023. He'd won the United Nations Champions of the Earth Award, the Right Livelihood Award, the Alternative Nobel Prize. But his real legacy is that forest, still standing, still growing, still proving the skeptics wrong. So let's talk about the numbers. Because they're almost hard to believe. By 2004, about 20 years after Renato's flat tire moment, farmers in Niger had regenerated between 5 and 7 million hectares of land. That's an area roughly the size of Ireland. 50% of the country's cultivated farmland. 200 million trees. Not planted, regrown. From stumps that were already there. 250,000 hectares were being reforested every year, naturally, by farmers, at almost no cost. Compare that to conventional tree planting projects, which cost millions of dollars and have a survival rate of 10 to 20%. The economic impact was enormous. An additional 500,000 tons of grain per year, enough to feed 2.5 million people. The equivalent of 900 million Australian dollars in additional income, every year, spread across 900,000 households. Crop yields increased by 20 to 100%, depending on the study. Farmer-herder conflicts dropped by 70% in areas where FMNR was adopted. The water table rose. The soil improved. The birds came back. Renato left Niger in 1999. He thought he'd made a small difference. He had no idea about the scale. It wasn't until 2004 that a Dutch geographer named Chris Rage dug up the satellite data and realized what had happened. He called Renato, and he said, "You're not going to believe this." Today, FMNR is being practiced in over 40 countries. Ethiopia, Malawi, Ghana, Senegal, India, Haiti, Myanmar. In each place, the same principle applies: find the stumps, protect the regrowth, and let the underground forest do the work. It's not a silver bullet. FMNR only works where there are living stumps in the ground. It needs secure land rights. It needs farmers who are willing to wait 3 years for the payoff. It needs protection from fire and free-ranging livestock. But where those conditions are met, it is arguably the cheapest, most effective, most scalable reforestation method ever discovered. The total investment over 30 years was less than €200 million, spread across government programs, NGOs, and farmer incentives. For 5 million hectares of restored land. That's roughly €40 per hectare. For context, conventional reforestation costs between $1,000 and $5,000 per hectare. FMNR costs pennies in comparison. And it proved something more important than any statistic. It proved that desertification is reversible. That the land can heal itself, if we stop damaging it. That the cheapest restoration of all is protecting what's already there. The underground forest exists everywhere that trees once grew. Under cities. Under farmland. Under deserts. The stumps are there, the roots are there, waiting. We just stopped seeing them. Yakuba Sawadogo put it better than I ever could. He said, "I don't want to eat today and leave future generations with nothing to eat." 200 million trees grew in Niger. Not because anyone planted them. But because farmers stopped cutting them down. Because an Australian with a flat tire looked at a bush and saw a tree. Because a man who couldn't read or write built a forest with a digging stick and a dream. The solution was underground the whole time. We just needed to look.